They say the rain in Portland has a personality. It's not the violent, angry rain of the Midwest or the warm, tropical rain of the South. It's a persistent, melancholic drizzle that seeps into the concrete, the trees, and eventually, your bones. It's a sound you get used to, the constant white noise of the city. But what happens when you start hearing a sound within the rain? A sound that isn't part of the storm, but is part of something else. Something that's following you. This is what happened to Liam. At 34, he was a journalist, and a damn good one, but he was running away. He'd left the cutthroat world of New York City reporting behind after a nasty divorce and an even nastier professional burnout. He took a job at a small, historic Portland newspaper, hoping the city's famous quiet and coffee shop culture would be the cure. He'd found a loft apartment in a converted warehouse in the Pearl District, a place with exposed brick, high ceilings, and old, rattling single-pane windows that watched over the damp streets. His new life was supposed to be simple, but simplicity is a luxury the past rarely affords. It was a Tuesday night in late October, the kind of night where the rain falls in a fine, chilling mist that gets you wetter than a downpour. Liam was in the newspaper's archives, a basement-level labyrinth of filing cabinets and the smell of decaying paper. He'd been chasing a lead on city council corruption, and as usual, had lost all track of time. When he finally looked at his watch, it was past 11 p.m. He was the last one in the building. He packed his satchel, the silence of the old building amplifying every rustling click. As he stepped outside into the slick, empty street, the cold mist immediately clung to his jacket. The streetlights cast long, watery halos on the pavement. He started the 10-block walk home, pulling his collar up against the chill. That's when he first saw him. A man huddled in the darkness of a bus shelter across the street. Liam only got a fleeting impression, a long dark coat, a gaunt frame. Just another soul trying to stay dry. Liam paid him no mind and walked on, his shoes making soft, rhythmic sounds on the wet sidewalk. Then he heard it. It was a slow, distinct sound like water falling from a height onto a hollow, wooden surface. It was out of place. It wasn't the gentle hiss of the misting rain. It was methodical, measured. He glanced around. No overflowing gutters, no leaky drain pipes. He looked back at the bus shelter. The man was gone. Liam shrugged it off. The city was full of strange noises. He kept walking, the rhythmic patter of his own footsteps his only companion. There it was again, closer this time, as if it were right over his shoulder. He stopped dead, his heart suddenly beating a little faster. The sound stopped with him. The only noise was the faint hum of the city and the whisper of the rain. He spun around. The street behind him was empty, disappearing into the misty darkness. A cold knot formed in his stomach. He told himself it was just his tired mind playing tricks on him. He started walking again, faster this time.
The sound was back, its pace matching his own frantic steps. It was right behind him now, a frantic, wet percussion against the night. He didn't dare look back. He broke into a run, his satchel bouncing against his hip, his breath coming in ragged clouds. The dripping sound became a torrent, a cascade of noise that seemed to envelop him, chasing him down the slick black street. He fumbled for his keys as he reached the heavy glass door of his building, his hands shaking. He slammed the door shut behind him, leaning against it, gasping for air. Silence. The dripping was gone. He was safe inside the brightly lit lobby. He felt foolish, his heart hammering against his ribs. It was nothing,
just the acoustics of the city, the paranoia of a man alone in a new place. He took the old freight elevator up to the 4th floor. The moment he stepped into his loft, the familiar comfort felt alien. The large, dark space seemed to watch him. He was on edge, the memory of the sound still echoing in his ears. His roommate, a cheerful graphic designer named Mark, was visiting family in Seattle for the week. The apartment was his alone. He tried to distract himself, turning on the TV, but the sound of the rain against the massive windows was a constant reminder of the world outside. And then he heard it again. It was faint, but it was inside. His blood ran cold. He muted the TV. He stood perfectly still, listening. It was coming from the kitchen area. He walked over, his footsteps unnaturally loud on the hardwood floor. He checked the faucet, bone dry. He looked under the sink. Nothing. It had moved. It was coming from the corner of the living room now, near the tall, leafy fiddle-leaf fig tree. He stared into the shadows of the corner, his mind racing. A leak from the ceiling. He looked up. The heavy wooden beams were perfectly dry. He spent the next hour chasing the sound. It was a phantom, moving from his bedroom doorway to the hall closet, to the bathroom. Every time he got close, it would stop, only to start again somewhere else. He was being toyed with. Exhausted and unnerved, he decided he needed to sleep. He went to close the blinds on the massive warehouse window that took up most of the far wall. As he reached for the cord, something caught his eye. On the wide wooden windowsill, on the inside of the glass, a small puddle of water had formed. It was maybe the size of a silver dollar. As he stared, a single drop of water fell into it from thin air. The puddle rippled. He looked up, frantically scanning the ceiling, the window frame. There was no source. The air above the sill was empty. With a trembling hand, he reached down and touched the water. It was shockingly cold. Not just rain cold, but an icy, unnatural cold that made him snatch his hand back as if he'd been burned. Suddenly, the lights in the loft flickered violently, casting the room in a strobe of light and deep shadow. They flickered again, and then held, but they were dimmer now, casting a sickly yellow glow. The dripping was back, and it was loud. It was coming from his bedroom closet. A primal fear seized him, telling him to run, to get out of the apartment and never come back. But another part of him, the stubborn journalist, the man who ran toward trouble, couldn't let it go. He had to know. He walked toward the bedroom, each step feeling like he was wading through water. He stood before the closet door, the sound clear and rhythmic from within. He took a deep, shuddering breath, wrapped his fingers around the cold metal knob, and pulled the door open. Among his shirts and jackets was the man from the bus shelter. His body was pale and bloated, his clothes soaked and clinging to a gaunt frame. His head was tilted at an unnatural angle, and his eyes were wide open, milky and vacant. He wasn't breathing. He was just hanging there. And the sound, the terrible dripping sound, was the steady fall of water from the fingertips of his outstretched hand, striking a puddle that was forming on the closet floor. Liam was frozen, a scream trapped in his throat. The figure's mouth slowly fell open, and a stream of murky, foul-smelling water poured out, splashing onto the floor. The room didn't fill with water, but the smell did. The smell of the river, of decay, of long-forgotten things. The scream finally tore from Liam's lungs, raw and desperate. He scrambled backward, falling over his own feet, and crab-walked out of the room. never taking his eyes off the impossible thing in his closet. He fled the apartment, not even stopping to grab his keys or his phone, and didn't stop running until he burst out into the rainy street, the cold mist feeling like a baptism. He spent the rest of the night in a 24-hour diner, shivering in a corner booth, drinking burnt coffee until the sun came up. He could not let it go. The next day, fueled by caffeine and terror, he went back to the newspaper archives. He didn't look for corruption. He looked for the history of his building. It took him hours, but he found it. A small, forgotten story from 1978. A dock worker named Frank Miller had lived in that very unit. He'd been a quiet man, a widower. He was accused by his foreman of stealing from shipping containers at the port. The accusations were baseless, a way for the foreman to cover his own crimes, but in a small community, the shame was a poison. Frank lost his job, his friends, his reputation. One rainy November night, unable to bear the weight of it all, he walked to the Willamette River, filled the pockets of his long coat with wrenches and heavy tools, and walked into the icy water. His body was found 3 weeks later, snagged on a pier downstream. The police report, which Liam read with a growing sense of dread, noted the advanced state of waterlogging and the persistent dripping from the extremities as they pulled his body from the river. Liam moved out the next day. He found a new, modern apartment on the other side of town. A place with no history, no exposed brick, no character. He wrote the story of Frank Miller, a tragic piece on a forgotten injustice. It was one of the best things he'd ever written. But he was never the same. The rain in Portland no longer sounded like white noise. Now he listens through it, always waiting. He's terrified of leaky faucets, of the sound of a dripping tap. Most nights, there is only silence. But sometimes, when the rain is just right and the city is asleep, he thinks he can hear it. Faint, but there. Whispers from the darkest corner of his room.